And you'll notice also that I'm enabling the live transcript. You'll have that too. All right. Well, welcome to this session on Inclusivity in Action. Is your learning designed for introverts and extroverts? My name is Linda Wiley. I'm your moderator today. I'm a doctoral student at Baker University and also an associate at the National Center for Media Literacy. Throughout the session today, I'm going to be posting links to ELK's Discord and YouTube channels. You can go there to find presentation materials and the session recordings. They said in the opening session today that anything that was given permission for has already been posted in the YouTube channel for the last couple days. So you want to go check those out. Toward the end of today's session, watch for the link for the session survey. ELK wants to hear about your experience, so please take a couple minutes to share your thoughts. And I've also been asked to remind you that at noon Mountain Time today, there is a vendor expo. The schedule lists them as two separate sessions, one with Beyond Campus Innovation, and the second one is with PebblePad, the Learning Journey platform. If you have a few minutes to check out those vendor sessions, ELK would appreciate that. And so with that, I just have to tell you, I had the honor of moderating for these two presenters yesterday. They were fantastic. You are in for a great treat. If you did not hear their session yesterday, you've chosen well for today. I'm very excited to get to spend another hour with these two. I'm going to turn it over to Karen and they'll do some introductions and get us going.
Well, welcome everyone. Glad to see we have so many that are willing to take a Friday, Good Friday, and visit with us. My name is Karen LaPlant. I'm a retired IT faculty from Hennepin Technical College in Minnesota. And since I retired, I've been doing curriculum design and instructional design work for Metropolitan State University. And this is my partner over here, Zala, in Greece. And he's also retired, but we're both, I think, as busy as we've ever been. But we get to pick and choose what we want to do and when. We actually have a book where some of this subject matter will be in there that we'll talk about. Zala is going to lead most of the presentation today while I'm going to be monitoring the chat. We will be wanting to hear your thoughts, so we will ask at least 3 or 4 different questions. So please go to chat and answer as we go through this presentation. And now I will turn it over to Zala.
Thanks, Karen. Yeah, Karen and I have worked together for, the last 20 years, which has been fantastic, a fantastic opportunity. And so I was a dean at Hennepin Technical College as well. Spent a lot of time working with faculty at the system-wide Faculty Development Center for Minnesota State colleges and universities, and also had an opportunity to teach at several of our state universities as adjunct, and gotten a chance to actually work with credentialing courses for faculty on how to teach. So I'm broadcasting from Athens, Greece, and Karen is down in Florida, and there we are. So, and you're all over the place, which is fantastic, and we really welcome you, and we're glad that you're here with us, joining us there. So, at any rate, let's get going on here. We're really going to be talking today about the whole idea of really taking a look at all the things that come together with the factors on designing effective and engaging courses. And of course, you've been hearing a lot of that throughout the conference, which is great. A lot of sessions that have been wonderful on that. But one of the overlooked kind of areas is this idea of whether or not students are sort of introverted and extroverted, and how do we make sure that both can be successful in the classroom. So, points to ponder, things to think about as we kind of overture the beginning of this session. How can extroverts excel in their work in your courses? What do extroverts bring to the quality of work? And then how do introverts excel in the work of your courses? And what do they bring as quality of work? And also, the other thing we want to really think about is, why is it important to have both introverts and extroverts working together in teams to support one another? And this last area is something that I've been really interested in, because in Athens, I've been working with a lot of businesses. And as we've talked about working from home, working in the office, where are the best sort of work environments for people, as well as, of course, in our classrooms, as we go to online, as we are in face-to-face, and anything in between. really where does that go? And so how is it that you can really put different groups together to be able to support one another in the learning process? The resources, this comes kind of from two areas. One of our colleagues, Linda Russell, and I actually wrote a piece for Inside Higher Ed talking about this topic, and you can see that. You can see if you go to encoreprodev.com, and we'll show you that later on again, you can get the opportunity to get to that pretty easily. The second one is from our book, Designing Effective Teaching and Significant Learning, that Karen has also co-authored with 6 of us from the Minnesota State System involved with that. And so we've been working a lot with these ideas, and we're going to share a little bit of that with you as we go through to be able to really talk about that, but knowing that it came pretty from our own experiences and these sources as well. So most of you probably know a little bit of the history of the introvert extrovert type of thing, coming from the whole idea of Carl Jung and going into the Myers-Briggs and taking a look at this sort of personality type. Extroverts being spelled with the A in this case, we're going to go with the O from now on, gives you an idea about what they're like. And I'd like you to think about yourself for just a moment. And when you want to see where you place yourself on the scale, reflect on the following. If you were attending a large event, could be a conference in person, it could be a party, it could be an event, a reception of some sort, do you feel energized and ready for more at the conclusion of the evening or the afternoon? Or are you tired and drained, even though you had a really good time when you go through and think about that? So just take a moment, reflect on how you feel as you think of yourself more toward the introvert extrovert type of situation. And what I'd like you to do right now is in the chat, just share with us, do you consider yourself to be more of an introvert or an extrovert? And then what characteristics do you possess that make you lean in one direction or the other? So it gets to be introvert, extrovert, and why. And we'll take just a couple minutes while you get a chance to enter into the chat. Karen will share our responses. Karen, I see we're starting to get some of them there. You may need to unmute if you mute it.
Yes. Lots of introverts, introverts that like quiet, don't like being the center of attention. COVID shifted them into be more of an introvert, but they really consider themselves to be a bit of both. Prefer to be away from large parts of the day. Again, introvert because I re-energize when I'm quiet, alone, and calm. And that's how I charge my battery. COVID has also caused me to become more introvert. Introvert is strong. And now we've got introvert, likes quiet and solitude, but I play an extrovert at work because I have to. Someone else is definitely an extrovert. I crave connection after being isolated for a bit. I become so excited to see others, to learn about what they're doing. I become more passionate about a topic when I start leading a discussion on it.
Great.
Some more introverts, introvert, but can play at extrovert. Introvert, like being alone, like sharing opinions and giving some inputs. Extroverts can do these. So kind of all over the place.
Well, you know, actually, in our work and what we've looked at through some studies is that actually more faculty tend to be introverted than extroverted. And yet you would think people who stand up in front of classes, people who are working, whether it be sort of either an active learning type of facilitator or something like that, you would think, well, aren't all teachers extroverts because they're like that? But yet at the same time, we find a lot of people in higher ed are actually introverts as we think about how they use their time and talents and what they enjoy doing most. And as several of you have talked about and responded, you can do both. You can jump into the pool of extrovert when you need to, but when you've got your own free time and you've got the other things that you want to do, you've got some downtime and some time to be able to relax and take things in. So that reflection time becomes extremely important. So let's move on and let's think about now in the area of what extroverts really are. Again, they gain energy from being with others. Their thinking feeds from the idea of others. They enjoy activities where they interact. They also enjoy thinking out loud. Sometimes they'll start talking and they'll eventually get to the main point, and sometimes they just need that verbal processing, talking out loud with people, to be able to sort of come up with what their final answer would be. Introverts prefer to keep more to themselves, like many of you talked about, tend to be quiet, reflecting, thinking, problem solving, problem finding at the same time, or they enjoy writing alone. And if the work environment isn't designed this way, introverts may not actually achieve their work potential. They're not their best in the classroom, or as you think of yourself in your own work that you do outside of teaching, the other duties that you have to take care of. Introverts may examine work challenges in a deeper dig. They might have that time, if they have the time, to sit and concentrate on that and really focus on that. And at the same time, they tend to assess more through that reflection, revealing important things that come across that way. So, and they have a lot, when you think about teams, they have a lot to be able to offer the teams, even though they might not be the biggest, brightest, brassiest, showiest kind of person that's in the team itself. All right, so introverted faculty and designers tend to design courses with a more reflective, internalized approach. Extroverted faculty and designers capitalize more on student interaction. They don't mean to favor one or the other, but they unconsciously gravitate toward that type of learning. So what we've really discovered in working with faculty, especially over the last couple of years during COVID, where a lot of people were redesigning their courses, and we worked with about 300 plus faculty in that arena. If we think about it, a lot of the introverted people were designing courses for introverted activities. Extroverted faculty were actually designing courses for extroverted type of things. So unless you actually think about both ways, it's hard to make sure that both introverts and extroverts have that opportunity to really succeed in the process of taking the design of the course. So that's what we'll get to today, and I'm going to have you think about one of your courses. So when you go to a conference in person versus this one online type of a situation, one of the things that becomes kind of interesting is in person, do you find yourself spending a lot of time talking with other people who are at the conference? Do you spend more time on your own? And think of the way you do things in that online version versus the actual in-person version. And so when you do that, it's a different kind of feel. And so actually a lot of conferences for the last couple of years, when they've been online, have given people a great opportunity to take a look at really attending and focusing on the material in a much different way than the experience of doing that. So one of my questions always is what's going to be the future direction? Will they be joint conferences where part of them are online and you can attend that way, or you can be there in person? And so really we kind of think about how conferences, professional development, even coursework that you're taking might provide an opportunity for you based on the more introvert dominant or extrovert dominant style that you have. Deirdre Faye Jackson, I don't know if you're familiar with her, she does a really good TED Talk, and they really talk about the idea here that far too often extroverts look at introverts with that sort of not ready for prime time bias. We tend to think that if people are going to succeed, they have to be an extrovert in order to succeed. And yet when you think of yourself, many of you identify it as leaning toward being an introvert, and you're very successful in your own right. A lot of folks that we see that have become Supreme Court justices and people who are community leaders really have had a strong sort of introverted value system that they've worked that way to be able to really make sure that they could really do that. So being the extrovert doesn't have to be everyone's goal. We don't have to think that we need 100% of our graduates to become extroverts to be able to be successful in their careers. So if you think about the fact that if you are expecting students, or you feel as though there's an expectation that you need to get them to reach this extrovert expert level, you're really taking something away from introverts themselves. Sometimes the self-esteem issues, they think they're less successful, they have this opportunity to not shine as much. They feel as though they don't get the opportunity to shine, is what I'm trying to say. And yet, as many as a third to half of the population lean toward being introverts. So when you think about that, trying to change everybody, it might be a little bit like that right-handed, left-handed thing where back in the olden days, everybody thought, well, you can't be left-handed. We better make you switch to being right-handed. We don't need to do that. We don't need to necessarily have people who are going to be all extrovert when they graduate from our area. So what I'd like you to do now is, again, in the chat, what experiences have you had as an introvert or an extrovert that made you feel like one of the two is more preferred than the other?
I know personally for me as a teacher, I grew up where my mother was a teacher and she was an extrovert. I guess I just thought naively that all teachers were extroverts. And then I got into teaching and found out that, yes, some of them could stand up and talk in their classroom, but outside of the classroom, they were very shy. They wouldn't talk to other people. They wouldn't give a large presentation. They were very shy and introverted. But because it was their job, they made themselves take on the role of the teacher. And I could see that it was very hard for them. And it just surprised me. I hadn't thought about it. Now I think about it all the time.
I know that as a faculty developer and a dean working with faculty, a lot of times people, faculty-wise, did not feel as though they didn't have that confidence to think that they could actually go and present what their work was like at a conference. They didn't feel as though they were good enough or that they had anything important to say. And I think that that was one of the things that I really would strive to make sure that they realized that the work that they were doing was great and it needed to be shared with others. Karen, what do we have in chat?
Well, one says that's how they gain energy. Someone else says contributing to class discussions, they need to think about what they want to say, not good at blurting out ideas. And then being able to talk to other people and make connections makes one seem to be an extrovert, to be in leadership. Caleb said his experience has been much like mine. He calls it putting on my extrovert mask. That's a good saying, yeah.
It is.
Maggie says, people always ask, why are you so quiet? But never asking an extrovert, why aren't you more quiet? I think it depends on your line of work. I'm an introvert, but like the other Don, I have to be more extroverted at work to communicate effectively with others. I also know I have to go home, recharge at the end of a busy day because it just wipes me out.
Yes.
As an introvert, I'm reflecting on this question and find it kind of hard to answer.
It is. And when you think about it, think about your students in the online for the last couple of years, as you've changed your courses to being sort of, again, maybe they were all face-to-face into this online environment. What advantages did introverts get in that opportunity? And what things did extroverts start to lose as a result of this switch, this pivot into online courses versus the face-to-face courses? Good. Thank you for sharing that information.
Kim says,
Right.
I'm
ahead,
an introvert, but have been told I need more confidence. If they only knew what's going on with me. Someone else says, I'm an extrovert, but I'm shy. It's different. I work with a very clear introvert who was super confident in public. Amanda says she's demonstrated this in my teaching this semester and then realized that the majority of my students were introverts. As a strong extrovert, I love class discussion, but this was not the preference for my students. So we transitioned to more reflective exercises and small group discussions.
That's excellent. Those are great tips already that are starting to come our way, and we're going to have, we're going to give you an opportunity to do even more of that. But if you really think about it, sometimes extroverts will rush forward. And this is, again, what faculty have told us when they were working on their redesign courses and started to think about the fact that, hey, I designed my course much like I am, so I was feeling comfortable with it, but I didn't think about the way the other group, if I was an introvert, I didn't think about the extroverts as much. But oftentimes they think back about how students would sometimes rush their work. They would complete it, they check boxes. Introverts sometimes in the online discussions and other things really gave a deeper example. They took the time to think this through and then answered the question. And of course, as you know, a lot of times when we're doing what I'll call live education, we're in the classroom face to face, you ask a question, and it's whoever buzzes in first that seems to that gets the answer and gets the attention at that point. We don't often give ourselves that opportunity unless you use something like a think, pair, share, where you give everybody a chance to think and you let them share with one person and then you share with the whole group. That idea that we start to let everyone have the time to think, or that you're using wait time when you're asking questions and you're counting to 5 or 6 quietly and you're giving people a chance to kind of think about the question more, so that helps. But again, putting teams together to make sure that your introverted students and extroverted students are working in tandem and they have an opportunity to really kind of bring together this diversity of thinking that really helps all of the learners in that group or that team. When you think about your course design, we're going to ask you to again think about your own courses and what it is that you do. We want to prepare students who are going to succeed in the workplace, and all of these skills become extremely important. And so we'll talk a little bit more about this in a minute, but we want people who start to begin to think that they can value what the introverts and the extroverts are bringing to the team. So in our book, we actually have, we use that in this online course design institute that we teach. And part of what we were doing there is that's where we get faculty who started to take a look at this and brought this up and really started talking and see themselves in the way of designing their courses the way they learned, so that they could now start to expand upon that and include activities for both kinds of students. So we took a look, first of all, at the situational factors of the course. This is sort of in the planning before you start working with objectives and assessments and all of that part. What they really wanted to do is start to take a look at how their redesigns were going to be intentionally balanced between introverts and extrovert-based learning activities, and the assessments much the same way, so that they could broaden the alignment with course outcomes and engage learning for all types of students. So we worked on, and there are more situational factors in this, but we really took a look at the characteristics of learners that are going to be in your class, and we looked at the characteristics of you, the instructor, the teacher. And we added this idea that let's take a look at the introverts versus extroverts. Who's taking your course? If you are in the nursing program, do you find that you have more introverts or more extroverts taking your course? When you are working in a public speaking course, are there more introverts or extroverts? So we had people start to dissect and really analyze what the kind of courses that they were teaching and who they tended to find sitting in the seats or were in the class list in an online situation. And then we had them examine themselves. Were they more introverted or extrovert dominant? And in doing so, how do you make sure that you're really making a course and designing a course where everyone's going to have that opportunity to succeed? So again, we got them to intentionally consider how to guide students to move from extraversion to introversion and vice versa, because both modes have benefits. Both types can help individuals develop a situational awareness. They can bring a better use of their talents by recognizing the talents of others. And again, the goal is teaching students to succeed in both realms of being introverted and extroverted. And then in taking on team roles, you get the idea that self-assigned work, each student gets the opportunity to work in their comfort zone. So when they are really working on the kinds of things in their own environment, the one that they're most comfortable with, obviously they've got a better chance for success. However, it can't just be that. You've got to be able to provide both, because in the workplace and when they graduate, in their personal and professional lives, they're going to need to be able to do both kinds of things. So, if you take a look, those of you who've had open Zoom sessions, where you let everyone on mic, you get people talking, or you break them up maybe into groups and you send them into rooms, you'll start to find out that, again, certain students, extroverts, will start to more verbally react and respond to discussion posts and more of the work in the groups and take on that part, where some of your introverts may hold back a little bit and they may not share verbally at first until they're really comfortable with A, what they're thinking about, they've had that time to process, and B, they're feeling comfortable because they think it's a safe environment. And so you, as the instructor, are usually going to see more evidence of thinking from the extroverted students, especially in the more face-to-face situation, as they're going to be more external about their communication. Introverts are, like we said, they're going to hold back. However, when you think about online courses, there are plenty of places, discussion posts being one of them, where they do get a chance to think, react, and then post what their responses are going to be. If the class is working in teams, you've got one person from each team talking, and I think of like a face-to-face. So let's say they're sitting at round tables or talking. One person's doing the talking, others are doing the listening. You don't know if everyone is really engaged or not. You can walk around the room, or if you're in Zoom, for instance, you can go into a Zoom room and get a chance to be able to talk or monitor the progress, provide feedback by jumping into the room. Again, more students, because you have several groups talking at the same time, you have more of an opportunity for students to participate, but you're still going to find that the extroverted students are doing more of the talking, while the introverted students are doing more of the thinking at that point to be able to be ready to. So even though there's several voices speaking in these classrooms or Zoom type of situations, you still don't know if all the students are actually thinking or they're sitting passively. And that's the most difficult, one of the most difficult things that faculty have told us that they feel, is that I don't know if everybody's really learning equally or having that opportunity. So Tanner Higgin suggests that we start to think about what participation is. And we often think about that participation is the thinking out loud part. That's the communicating, that's the first in, first answer, those kinds of things, and that's what we tend to give credit to and for, because if you'll notice, oftentimes in your classroom discussions, especially in a face-to-face type of situation, you take the first answer and maybe you don't keep pressing and keep asking and going for deeper thinking beyond that. You take the first answer, we move on, it becomes much like a game show at that point. So it becomes important for participation to really give students a much better chance to sit and think about something and reflect on it before they start to do that. You'll also see extroverts doing much more. They're much more in the sense of usually getting up, helping others, they're volunteering, they come to the office hours, maybe they stay after class to talk with you. Some of those other kinds of things happen much more from extroverts over introverts. So we really want to think about what is participation and engagement, and where does the thinking really come from. So even though we've increased active learning over the last few years, and especially during the pandemic, we want to really take a look at the ways that you engage students online. So I want you to think about that course and what you have done over the last couple of years to be able to do that. What considerations do you have to give to think about what active learning means for both extroverts and introverts? Great course design is going to be a balance of the passive learning, short lectures, readings, active learning where students apply and demonstrate the concepts, connective learning, where students bridge previous learning to new learning, and reflective learning, in which the students analyze and process the process that they used and the progress they made in their learning. Each of these types of learning is effective, and you need to balance your design that way so that all students can use those four in a course. Because there is a place for short lectures, there is a place for the reading. Passive does not have to be a bad thing at all, because it is a good way to get some of the information you need. And with good questioning and things like that, you get the opportunity to get students involved. Active learning, great for extroverts and introverts who are learning to become extroverts. And then when you have the connective learning, that's good for everybody. That takes a great deal of patience to start to take a look at where were you and where are you going. And finally, the reflective learning is, how am I going to be able to use this in the future? Answers that question, why am I taking this class, or why do I need to know this stuff? All right, and that becomes a critically important part, and that's what keeps students much more engaged in what they're learning and how they're going to be able to use it, because when they can see that connection to their futures, then they tend to be much more engaged. So in the chat again, how did you change your online courses to increase engagement and participation during the pandemic? And will you continue to use these strategies after the pandemic is over, if that's ever the case? Ignoring what's happening in China right now and what the next variant might be.
Okay, we got group work, where the students changed, allowed students to get to know each other, which made for better discussions when we did talk. Someone else said they've been creating videos and posting those. A writing teacher said working with reflection into action, balancing activities and cognitive learning and intuitive learning, paying attention to Jug's active imagination and personality self. So some visuals, some video, and some activities for project-based learning with games.
Yes. One of the things that we learned in this process from faculty who wanted to sort of just convert their face-to-face course into sort of a direct translation into an online course was we weren't exactly sure that they learned that, some of these things actually work better in an online situation, frees them up so that they were in a blended or a hybrid type of course, or even the total face-to-face course, that it was a better use of their time. They could use their time better in the face-to-face sessions than by just simply trying to do it all in the classroom, because they found that it actually gave students much better time to work on their own outside of class and bring that in. Karen, anything else?
Somebody said added more choices for students to show understanding in different ways. They could create a video, write a paper, use a technology tool of their choosing. Someone else said they transitioned a group project that was normally face-to-face to have them create a website together to present the project.
Nice.
And I said I try to make a community feeling in all my online courses. So I introduce myself, I post a few pictures outside of my role as a teacher, and ask students to do this too, kind of right away in the beginning, get them to feel like they're part of a community, that we all care.
And so we really start to break down the rules of what's an introvert and what's an extrovert, and we start to bring people closer together in the middle. So what we really want to do is create ambiverts. We want the people to be able to transform their skill sets of being an extrovert and an introvert, and we want to move them to the center, teaching them that they can move along this spectrum as the situation changes and requires a different approach, so that they not only do that in your coursework and in their education, that they're also going to be doing that much like the same kind of a situation in the workplace and their professional lives or personal lives out there. So ambiverts actually know when to sort of push and when to pull back. They can take on both roles. They know when to speak up and when to listen. They also learn from one another to switch strategies to complete work, and sometimes it's really great when the introverts need to do the extrovert type thing and the extroverts need to do the introvert kind of thing. You can do that by putting on different hats. You can do that on breaking people up to work in their opposite styles and really get them thinking about that. Most of us are actually ambiverts, and some of you, when we forced you to sort of do that, are you an introvert or an extrovert, you were starting to say, well, I'm really both. I'm really part of both. I can see where I need to do this during some of my day, and I need to do the other in another part of my day, and I know how to move back and forth. As we get older, we tend to be stronger ambiverts because, of course, we've had much more experience doing that, and that's a great lesson to be able to share with your students as we go through here. So many students actually, when they may come into your class, when you think about your introductory courses in your curriculum, they really are kind of more anchored toward that extrovert or introvert kind of thing. They don't understand why this becomes important. Why is this critical for them to be able to move and slide back and forth, much like you can see the graphic here, is that they know when to go back and forth. So they can't expect that faculties and designers are only going to cater to the ends of the spectrum, because there's going to be a whole middle part of the course design that doesn't really do everything you want it to be able to do. So it's really great to be able to design the courses to get them to move toward the center where ambiverts thrive, so that they get a little taste of the one that they're more comfortable with or familiar with or that they're used to, and they also get some of the other stuff that they're going to need to be able to do in the workplace. All right. So beyond your course and graduation, students as future employers are going to need to shift effortlessly and effectively to the skills that best take on the challenges of work. And as they move through your curriculum, they need to do the very same thing, because you don't want those students who walked in your intro courses in your program or your department, you don't want them when they're leaving in graduation to be in the same place. You know that you want to transform them. So online learning creates a good balance. Students learn asynchronously or synchronously as you go through that through web conference sessions, and you have the ability to use some of the tools that are involved with that online type of situation, and synchronous tools or asynchronous tools, to be able to give them the time to think and act and everything that way. So providing those opportunities for those who prefer to type responses is a successful strategy for all students. And a good question or posting those responses are actually great ways to start to see the participation. Those are things you can actually measure. When you start to take a look at what the quality of your course is, you really begin to see what are students telling you in those kinds of responses in the posts of the great questions that you provide for them. So using the online discussions tool really give you an opportunity to demonstrate the content application, no matter if you are the extrovert or you're the introvert and you move them toward being an ambivert. So when you write a prompt to pose, when you actually create that, students are given the time to think through those things, and they can uncover their own thinking, which I think is the most critical of the bullets below. Without being influenced by the others. It gets them to do the thinking. You know that there's some active learning taking place there. You hopefully will see some connective learning. You will also see some of the reflection in their thinking about where they're going to be able to take this. You can also, of course, provide rubrics for students to sort of self-assess their post, to make sure they've got everything and that they've completed everything. So for those extroverts who love to race through something, the checklist or the rubric really gives them an opportunity to stop and think about, did I really answer the question, so I can get not only the full set of points, but can I really provide a solid answer that I'm going to need to be able to do when I'm on the job. So Discussions work for creating ambiverts because everyone has the opportunity. Everyone is more on that equal playing field that way. And as a result, not only can the instructors better assess every student's growth and progress because everyone needed to contribute, but you really start to expand the learning because you're starting to share multiple perspectives and you have an opportunity for expanding the discussion as you continue on. And then I'll show you the table on the next slide because I really want you to start to think about a course that you have right now. One of the things that's in the article that we put in there through Inside Higher Ed was this idea of what are some of the learning activities that we have. And if you look down that left column, you may start to see some of the things that obviously I've already talked about, but it's some of the things that you may have in your courses as well. And the question you ask yourself is, how is this good for introverts and how is this good for extroverts? And it gives them an opportunity to really sort of break this down and take a look at how this becomes something that they're going to be able to use and that you can actually start to say, you know what, I've got a course here that does hit both introverts and extroverts and gives them an opportunity to shine by doing some of these activities. It's intentional, like we said before. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to move on beyond that. I'd like you to go ahead and say, what learning activities or assessments do you use in your courses to promote students becoming ambiverts?
We are down to our last 4 minutes.
Okay.
I think everybody's busy thinking, but nobody's typing.
Or they're busy typing and it just hasn't come through yet.
That could be too.
That's good. That's okay. We want to give them time, and we know 4 minutes isn't a great deal of time to really think and produce at that point. I'm going to show you the next slide on here as we wait for some responses and think about that. This is an activity that we throw out in front of the faculty that we're working with in the online Course Design Institute. And we really start to take a look at what are those extrovert activities, assignments, assessments, what are the introverted ones, and what are the ambiverted ones. And I think by starting to divide that, it really helps to get the idea that you are actually creating more and more toward ambiverts as you progress in your curriculum.
We got a couple of responses. One is discussion forums where everyone is required to post and to respond to others. That's always good. Another one said multiple modalities in submitting projects. Another good one.
And that's one of the things that faculty told us, especially during the pandemic, they really started to expand on, is that there wasn't just going to be this one size fits all for everything, because there are multiple ways of being able to assess and to be able to create learning activities for students. So in summary, basically, I think it's this idea that we actually create duly delivered both face-to-face and online environments for students to be able to do that. We think about how can we create courses that are going to be great opportunities for introverts and extroverts as we move them toward the ambiverts. So again, choosing a balance of these learning activities gets full participation and engagement, and faculty members should consider the learning activities when you're going through here as to what are going to be the best learning environments for all of your students to be able to do that. Feel free to grab a picture of this as we're on our way out. It's just a quick type of thing. There's the book. If you go to encoreprodev.com, you can download this slide deck. You can also get a link to where that article is and see everything there. So grab that. 20% discount on the book, so you got all that kind of stuff. Take a picture of this whole thing. It's been a pleasure getting a chance to talk with you, and I'm going to turn it back over to Linda. Thanks for your contributions to our discussion today.
What a great session. And again, just my joy to moderate for you 2 days in a row. I don't know if they did it on purpose or not, but I have just enjoyed every minute with both of you. Thank you so much. Just a couple of things, friends, if you take a look in chat. A reminder that about the Vendor Expo that is at noon Mountain Time today, Beyond Campus Innovation and Pebble Pad, the Learning Journey. We invite you to join both of those. And the presenters have also uploaded their materials to our Discord channel at Presenters, Slides, and Resources, so check them out there. We want to hear about your experience, so take a moment and click on the survey and complete the survey. The ELK team takes your feedback very seriously, and they just roll it all up into the next time around. So we thank you for that. Thank you again for joining the session today, and have a great rest of the conference.
Bye, everybody.